Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another screencast of Total OS Today. This is actually another TosCast podcast number 2 between myself, Total OS Today, from the US of A, and my good friend from Australia, Infinitely Galactic. If you haven't already, please check out the first TosCast podcast that was done, I believe, May 31st, almost a month ago. That one was totally unscripted, but it seemed to flow pretty well. For this one, this will be done more scripted in two parts. The first part will be the mortal combat between Windows and Linux, specifically Windows 7 versus Zorin Linux OS 5. And then, time permitting, in part two, we will probably touch on some random topics and see how it goes from there. So, without further delay, let me transfer the microphone to my friend many, many, many thousands of miles away in Australia to Infinitely Galactic.
Hello, everybody who listens to the podcast, and thanks again for tuning in. Basically, we're wanting to talk about the age-old topic of Windows versus Linux, and obviously, this is a topic which has caused many flame wars over the internet in years past. But in all honesty, what we're going to discuss today is not flame bait in any way, but it's just wanting to bring the pros and cons of using Windows, using Linux, what either side needs to do to improve, and what the benefits are of running either or system. So, in my opinion, there is always going to be a need for Windows at this point. So I'm just going to say that up front. But having said that, desktop Linux is coming a long, long way, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes in the future. So that said, start out just by talking about just basic usability level. So obviously with the recent developments of GNOME Shell and Unity, they are considered to be the next generation of Linux desktops. But at the same time, the older experience that most people are used to, definitely such as Zorin OS or Linux Mint, those have generally been the Windows-centered sort of distributions. But how long are these distributions going to be around for? And is the next generation of Linux desktops, is it something that is indeed user-friendly coming from a Windows camp? So what do you think? Do you think that that GNOME 3 or Unity is usable as far as a Windows user is concerned?
I think from my Windows brain perspective, I think GNOME 3 probably looks a little more slicker per se, but actually it's now that you mentioned that GNOME and or Unity, I still have Unity on my HP laptop. My intention was to delete Zorin 4, which I did since Zorin 5 was coming out. It wasn't quite out yet, and to install Unity and figure maybe I would try it for a week or two and not like it, then install Zorin 5. Well, guess what? I still have Unity on my HP multimedia laptop. Nothing against Zorin 5, which is terrific. They're just there's something about Unity because it looks different than the standard Ubuntu, but not say too different than say from Windows 7. That dock at the left, that Unity dock, really is a version per se of a Windows 7 superbar. So maybe that's why I feel comfortable in it. And so far, uh, except for I think we talked about this briefly in the last podcast about the power management bug about the laptop battery not giving me a reading. It's
Yeah.
been pretty stable. It does run slow, and that's probably another thing we should talk about. Unity with what do I have in that? Unity with 2 gigabytes of RAM does not run zippy at all. It runs, in fact, Windows XP, which I still dual boot with that, runs faster.
Yeah.
So, you know, performance-wise, and I think we briefly touched about this when we personal message each other. I think the performance gap I think is starting to narrow.
Mm,
Unity, if I read correctly on the Ubuntu system requirements for Unity, it requires a minimum of 1 GB. Now, 2 years ago, if somebody would have said, hey, to run a Linux operating based system, you need at least 1 GB of RAM, I would have said, say what? But I mean,
yeah,
it's not necessarily bad. Times are changing and newer computers are getting faster and more affordable. But
yeah, right.
I think your original question was, what about Unity or GNOME 3? Well, so far, for me, Unity appears to be stable, if somewhat slow. GNOME 3, from what I've been hearing around the community, still probably has more bugs than Unity. What have you been hearing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like my experience with No 3 was mostly on Fedora 15, which I ran for a decent amount of time. Yeah, I mean Fedora as a base isn't my distribution of choice, but that's another topic. But yeah, I'm not sure. As far as I was concerned, I definitely thought that GNOME 3 had more polish.
Okay.
I think it was more finished than Unity
Yes.
was on launch day.
Yes.
And I mean, especially with the fact that the community has gone absolutely berserk with the extension M3 extensions, which can basically customize it however you want it, and there is even a meta package of extensions which can change it to almost
Yes.
an identical GNOME 2 experience, and I
Yes.
think that's fantastic. I think that's what for me that makes GNOME 3 better than Unity at this point. But
Yes.
that's not to say that Unity is going to get much better and more customizable. So
Yeah.
yeah, my
Yes.
opinion was that GNOME 3 was more polished on release date. They both came out within a couple of weeks of each other.
Yes.
And yeah, but then again, I actually found Unity slightly easier to use from my
Yes.
point of view
Yes.
than GNOME 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there was when I did that review of the GNOME 3, I think I downloaded the Fedora version of it. I can't remember. There were only two versions available, Fedora and
And
something
SUSE,
else.
yeah.
SUSE, okay.
Mm,
And the one thing I noticed that really irked me was, when you go to the top right of the panel bar, when you have the power options, there was no shutdown. And I'm like, is this a bug?
yeah,
And it was not a bug. They purposely had you, I believe, hold the Alt or the Shift button so it changed
yes,
the icon. I'm like, come on, guys. I mean, if, Ubuntu companies or OSs like Ubuntu and Zorin and probably others that are trying to impress Windows users like myself by saying, hey, some Linux is better, it's faster, it's more friendly. Try us out. But then they put a stupid app, or not an app, but a stupid function like that. I'm saying, what were you guys thinking of?
yeah, yeah.
You know what
In
I mean?
fact,
Yeah.
it actually reminds me, ironically, of when Vista came. I remember they changed the default button, which is generally referred to as the power off button, but they
Yes.
made that as the standby button by default, and you had to go over to a little arrow, click fly out menu, and
Yes.
that gave you the shutdown option. They
Yes.
really sort of dug themselves a bit of a grave in that one, and
Yeah.
so in Windows 7 they changed it back to shutdown.
Uh, Sometimes, the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes that's the best. I mean, I'm all for, slick and polished and fancy, but some things should just not be touched. And that's the simple on off, but that's my opinion. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you're right. As far as your comment before about system requirements, there is no doubt that Ubuntu and it seems Linux in general is getting heavier.
yes,
But obviously, one of the strengths of Linux is its adaptability, and everybody is not stuck with just running stock standard Ubuntu or Fedora or anything like
yes,
that. Of course, there are the lighter options out there, and quite honestly, like even the lighter weight Ubuntu derivatives like Xubuntu.
yes.
Xubuntu 11.04 is actually a really fantastic release.
Okay.
And if I was running if I was running with with less than, I don't know, less than a gig and a half or less than 2 gig of RAM, I
Okay.
reckon it's a pretty decent system. Like they've really got it looking up to
Okay.
par with any modern distribution, which I think is a pretty big deal.
Okay.
But there is always going to be those lighter weight distributions out there. But
Yes.
then the problem is that they're not the poster child of Linux. They don't seem to always receive the same attention that their
Yes.
mainstream
Yes.
counterparts, and also more often than not, they don't have as many features as something like Unity or GNOME 3, etc.
Yes, I do recall installing on my HP laptop, was it a year ago, a previous version of Xubuntu was Ubuntu, and I do remember it ran pretty fast. It ran, I mean, it was zippy, much faster than Unity, but then it's not quite as slick looking. It didn't have that Unity bar, of course, but it did run
Yeah.
a lot faster. But Unity and Ubuntu or Xubuntu, those are totally two different animals. One it's meant to be stripped down, bare bones, functional, and then
Mm.
Unity is functional, but it's got more pizzazz. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it all
Absolutely.
depends what you're looking for. And both
Yeah,
have
that's
their,
right.
yeah, I mean, both have their place among Windows slash Linux users. But
Mm.
I wanted to get back to your last video. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I think the Zorin PC, I think it's on a delayed schedule. The last time I checked, and I would have been surprised if it was not delayed because I still think for Zorin to succeed, the Zorin PC has to be about as close to 100% bug free as possible, because if it's not, look at it this way: if they sell a Zorin PC to a Linux user like yourself and it's stable but it has one minor bug, you will probably say, "Oh, I've seen that before, I can just fix that." If a Windows user buys a Zorin PC for the first time and sees one bug that he's never seen before, unfairly, that PC is going to be returned.
That's right.
That's how I see it as a Windows shopper. So, if they can, if it's possible, release it with zero bugs. If it's possible, because again,
Mm.
all it takes is one small bad experience for a Windows user. Let me give you an example. I mentioned I did the update to my Linux Mint and the panel bar went goofy on me, but I was also doing an update to my other laptop that has Linux Mint 10 actually. So I went to the update manager, do the usual, I have, 22 updates, 45 megabytes, okay, and click install, fine. Oops, something's wrong. A little pop-up, fix broken packages first. Now, I have seen that before, so that's not new to me. Okay, so I'll just go into the Synaptic Manager and click this, filter the broken. Oh, wait. Synaptic Package Manager doesn't list any broken packages whatsoever, but when I go to
Mm.
the Update Manager, it says fix broken packages first. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah, let me finish this real quick, but don't lose that train of thought that you had. So I'm like, now I have seen this before. I couldn't quite remember how to fix it. Maybe you can brush me up on this. But I thought to myself, uh-oh. Now, if a Windows user buys the Zorin PC or any PC, it could be Ubuntu or whatever, but let's say, for the sake of this podcast, Zorin, so they buy that Zorin PC and, oh, click update. Oh, kind of like Windows 7. Cool. Okay, let me click, and it says broken to a Windows user. That's probably not the choice of word I would use for a Windows user to look at to fix something, if you know what I mean. Broken. Now, it should say, in my opinion, I think something more user friendly, saying, it pops up instead of saying fix broken packages. Oops, please fix incomplete package. Please finish downloading previous package. Please fix, or please fix corrupted package. But as a Windows user or to a new Linux user, the word broken probably is not a good choice of words. but that's my
Oh,
opinion.
fantastic. My package manager's broken. Do I return it or what?
Right. I mean, you and I have seen that before. It's no big deal. But for a new, Windows Linux shopper, it's not his or her fault. They see broken, great, now my machine's broken. Now it's easy to just brush it off and say, gee, another dumb Windows user. Hold a bit. Hold on a second. Time out here. You know, if a Linux-based OS is trying to impress a Windows user, then impress them with zero bugs,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
Um,
And I think
yeah,
And I think, yeah, I mean, I had that. I remember having that exact issue with Linux Mint 10. And apparently, if you go onto their forums, they're rife with Mint 10 broken packages, fixed broken packages, question mark sort of thing, like what's going on. So I
okay,
think it was a well-known bug, but that is a real deal
yes,
breaker for
yeah,
somebody who is just stepping their foot in the
yeah.
water for the first time and seeing broken packages. What is that supposed to
I
mean?
I totally agree, and I think I was trying to do an update last night, and I saw broke, and I'm like, now how do I do that? And I couldn't remember, so I said, oh the heck with it, I'll just leave it, just leave it the way it is. But it's like
Yeah.
I've seen it before, and I've said, come on, guys, guys meaning Linux Mint and Ubuntu and maybe possibly Zorin. I don't want to see this, but I understand things break down even in Windows, so I am tolerant. But
Yeah.
I guess getting back to my point, to a new Linux user, I would not choose the word broken. So,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, secondly, as something else that I wanted to touch on was you know the application selection or the programs that you can run on a Windows desktop and a Linux desktop. Because obviously an operating system is not just the system, it's more
yes,
about the applications that you run on it.
right,
And I feel that while there is definitely progress being made in
yes,
this area, I think this is an area where Windows is going to, yeah, really kick Linux's backside for a while to come.
yeah,
Only because Windows has the dominant market share. When a new PC comes out, it's running
yes,
Windows. Therefore,
yes,
everybody is used to the application
yes,
of a Windows desktop.
right,
And I'm not sure what exactly the perfect answer is for that. Whether I mean, having said that, you could look at it and say, well, yeah, but then Macs have the same problem as
yes,
Windows
yeah,
because,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they don't have a huge market share
right,
comparatively to Windows,
right,
but their
right,
applications are very different. But yet
yes,
people seem to be able to learn them, and they're good products and they're good applications. So I really think this is where
um,
the defining point for Linux comes in is the open source community capable of producing applications which are, up to par with, up to par with really simple applications that people
yes,
are seeing on their iPhones, their iPads, their Android tablets, and their
yes,
Macs, and
yes,
a lot of Windows programs as well. Can we make something that comes across as professional, that comes across as usable, and
yes.
really simple for someone just to pick up and start using?
Um, yeah, I mean, myself as a dual booter, it's I did a video not too long ago, something called Linux for girls. Just something off the cuff, and one of my female friends, I showed her. I wasn't sure if it was Linux Smith. It may have been Ubuntu, and then one of the first things she said is, "Where's the start button?" Or "Where's all the junk? Where's all the shortcuts? Where's all the junk I like?" Of course, I kept mine clean. But I mean, in terms of software and between Apple and Windows and Linux, the only thing I can say is with me running multiple dual boots, I just girls, that one video I did, like Linux for girls, they want the same thing I want or the masses want. They just want it to work. I don't think they're really I don't, well, I don't think consumers so much really care about the name or the label per se. Microsoft label, PC versus Apple versus Zorn, as long as it just works. That the software works out of the box, zero bugs or as close to zero bugs as possible. Now, Of course, some Windows software doesn't quite work as well in Linux, even though you can use Wine or Play on Linux, I believe but it never quite works right. So sure, some software that is, say, exclusive to Windows, just at least not yet, will not work 100% in a Linux-based operating system. A good example is I have a Microsoft Zune MP3 player, kind of like an iPod, and I cannot get it to link up to my Linux OS. That's not a deal breaker for me. It would be nice if it could, but it doesn't. That's okay. But as far as the different companies, different OSs, different pieces of software, I think it all comes down to when a person buys that XYZ PC, no matter what's installed, you want to plug it in, click your favorite apps, maybe do a couple updates, downloads, and ready to go. The moment bugs start popping up, and this includes Windows 7, I haven't seen any bugs yet, but whether it's Apple, Windows 7, or any Linux based operating system, the moment a bug or two or three start to pop up, at least to a new uh, PC consumer, that is a deal breaker. So it just has to work. I mean, I'm still getting comments. Who cares about Windows users? So no, I didn't reply, but to a comment like that, I wanted to reply. So your comment is, who cares about Windows users? Well, you must be one of the real friendly members of the open source community that people keep talking about. That's what I wanted to say, but I did not. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not sure if that answers your question, but from a pragmatic point of view, I just want it to work. So in other words, when I click this piece of software that worked in the previous version of Ubuntu or Linux Mint, why doesn't it work now? So now I got to
yeah,
figure out something. This is it's frustrating. So
yeah, yeah. Again, I completely agree with what you're saying, and in my mind, it's very much, I think, broken down into two categories as far as programs that people want. As I mentioned to you earlier in a message, in my mind anyway, there's just the people that have their phones and they just do their Facebooking, their Twitter, and their
yes, yes,
a bit
yes,
of they have a photo collection and they do a little bit of homework and things like that.
yes,
And at least in my mind, I think those are the perfect candidates for at least introducing them to a Linux distribution of some sort,
yes,
because those basic functionalities, um, you know, Linux, I think, really has it down. I
yeah,
mean, just to use Ubuntu as an example, things like the me menu,
yes,
they've got fantastic integration with, emailing and your, even you can even manage like your Skype, you can even manage like Skype emails, your Twitter, your Facebook, everything from just
yes,
that top panel. And I think that's fantastic.
yeah,
But then I think it really falls apart when you try and well, not really sell Linux, but you try and promote Linux in a
yes,
more professional environment, because
yes,
honestly, up to par professional software just doesn't exist
right,
in
yeah,
Linux. I mean, there
yeah,
are great examples like there's for
yes.
instance, there's Scribus, the desktop, what's it called, page publishing software. That is a
I
really
haven't
solid
used
piece of
that, but
software.
okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah, that is a very solid, stable piece of
okay,
software that companies have been using for quite a while.
yes,
I've heard of a few isolated examples, but
yes,
it's software that we need like that. Like, I mean, in the professional environment, you have designers or you have, photographers, you have graphic designs, you have all these different professions. And, honestly, no one can really compete with, the Adobe Creative Suite or Microsoft Office or
yeah, yeah,
those sort of
yeah,
software. And I think that's always going to be a bit of a weak point in
yeah,
Linux. So
yeah,
I think, at least at this point, it definitely Linux seems to make more sense on the home front.
yes,
But then again, I can't argue with the fact that most of Linux's revenue that is generated is from corporations that
yes,
that that run Linux on their servers, on their desktops. Red Hat alone, I think, has gotten like 200 something million dollars of revenue just in the
Wow.
last half
Really?
year.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're doing incredibly well,
Yes.
and even SUSE and all of those that offer
Yeah.
enterprise level operating systems, although they are really out of date by our
Yeah.
standards, they run really old software, but it's stable, it's rock
Yeah.
solid, and it
Yeah.
works. And I mean, and it sure doesn't look like $1 million either, but
Right.
it's rock solid, it works, and it's very easy to maintain. And I think from that point of view, as far as just sheer internet infrastructure, email, office work, and just things like that of that nature,
Yeah.
it's a very viable option. But for professionals, when it
Yes.
comes to, actual producing content or, oh, well, I don't know,
Yeah.
architects and things like that,
Yes.
it's just not there. Like, I mean, Linux as a base presents a very professional sort of
Yes.
alternative because it can be so rock solid.
Yeah.
Compared to something like Windows, it can run on limited hardware if need be.
Yes. Yes.
But you know, until I think the software comes up to par,
Yes.
as far as professional software goes, we're kind of going to be at least the up to date and the cool stuff is going to
Yes.
be limited to the home user.
I would have to agree. I mean, the Zorin PC, once it comes out, if this thing fails, Zorin really is, Zorin and Mint to me are about as close to Windows 7 in terms of stability, functionality, and as close to zero bugs as possible. Not quite there, but if that fails, I don't know how far this will set back a Linux-based operating system or Zorin for that matter. I mean, I still get nice comments, because usually, it's usually me or you or maybe somebody else that is promoting or is talking about Zorin more than once. And I think one of
Yeah,
the last comments I received was something like, "Hey, you know what? Forget Mint, Zorin for president," or something like that. I said, "Sure, sure, why not?" But if the Zorin PC fails for whatever reason, you know, what's going to happen is, hey, I bought it, but like, well, I told you, Linux Mint, that's for geeks and for, people who, graduated from, Harvard, computer school or something like that. It's not fair to think or say something like that, but, I think OSs like Zorin, Mint, and then possibly with Unity, I think they are trying really, really hard to break away from the ultra geek factor to the more mom and pop type of a setting. At
yeah,
least if I was in their marketing, type of department, that's what I would be looking. That would be my goal.
yeah,
If I was promoting, on a professional level, Zorin and or Mint. But yeah, we talked about this during the last TosCast. It's just the minor little bugs. Like today, I did an update and the panel bar, I had to reinstall the panel bar and in the applications and now something, it's just the little things that should not happen, especially after an update, but they do, and they continually do, release after release after release. It's not major, but it's just enough. It's just enough of an annoyance for a Windows user like me to talk about it. But it
yes,
is what it is, and I know, there are many viewers who look at my channel who, on a certain level, trust me for my honest opinion views. I think one of the greatest comments was, "You see things in a neutral way," and I have to be that way.
yeah,
And with Windows 7, it's been just about, honestly, with Windows 7, I'm still waiting for my first bug and or virus. So that being said, I challenge the Linux community to send me a virus. No, I don't. But I haven't seen that. Who knows? Maybe I'm immune to bugs and virus because of all the vitamins I take or something silly like that. But I
most
haven't seen
probably,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But with Windows 7 so far, I'm not saying that it's perfect. I have not seen a bug or a virus yet. Now, is that too
yeah,
much to ask from Zorin? Well, of course, Zorin, you really don't have to worry about viruses. that much, but it's more the little annoying little bugs that are still there. So,
Mm,
you
mm.
know, and for some Windows users who see a bug or two or three, and maybe it's the same bugs over and over, that's it. They're done. They have no tolerance like I do or any form of patience, and they give up. And it's not their fault because they're probably thinking, you know what, I've seen this before. Here it is again. You know, it's the same bug, and enough is enough. Now, you know, I try to promote, well, you know, it's not that bad, but try doing this. You know, I do offer some free support. You know, I get occasional questions. I try to answer back, well, have you tried this and this, you know? But, you know, uh, I was watching, who was I watching on YouTube? Uh, Chris Pirillo. You may have heard of him.
Yes, yep,
All right. He's probably as geeky as they come when it comes to, and I guess he loves Windows and Macs. And I say that with total respect because he seems to know what he's talking about. But he was asked about, you know, will Ubuntu become popular, will become mainstream for the masses, you know, being that it's based on Linux? And he said no because uh, he says, for one thing, there's just too many types of variations, versions of Linux that he does not see Ubuntu or a Linux-based system becoming mainstream anytime soon. I believe the question was asked a year or two ago because
yeah.
there is no standardization of software quality standards and stuff like that, and that's basically how I see it.
Yeah, and I
So
completely agree with you.
yeah,
I think to sum up this topic, I really think that actually Linux's biggest strength it can also be its biggest weakness in that
yes, yes.
Linux is so adaptable, it's so modular. But the problem is and because it's constantly evolving, that's fantastic for the geeks and for the nerds because they
Yes.
always like
Yes.
new stuff.
Yes.
But, I mean, even taking from Windows standpoint, they took a big step with Vista and they really messed things up quite considerably. So then
Yes.
they just kept Vista and then
Yes.
polished it and polished it and polished it
Yes.
for like 3 years and then released
Yes.
Windows 7 that worked. And I think, and that's what everybody just loved them for was the fact that they got Windows 7 right.
Yes.
And I think the problem is with Linux is because we are evolving so much faster than the Apple Mac or Windows, then
Yes. Yes.
we're constantly, fixing and we're improving and we're innovating. But then at the same time, those who don't want to be constantly improving, fixing, and
Right.
innovating,
Right. 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 Right.
they're left with all these little bugs that just that
Yeah.
get left lurking around. For
Yes.
me, the best Linux experience that I've had in general has been with the Ubuntu 10.10 release cycle.
Okay.
There wasn't anything new in it. It was basically 10.04 polished, and
Okay.
10.04 was fantastic. But I think 10.10, at least for me, in my
Okay.
experience with my hardware, etc.,
Okay.
that was the one that was the most seamless, bug-free experience that I had. And funnily enough, I actually am now like after going through all sorts of Ubuntu 11.04 derivatives, I'm now back with Elementary OS, which is based
Oh.
off Ubuntu 10.10.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, the 11.04 release cycle was good, but the problem was that it's put out a new desktop environment. They were
Yes.
working so hard on that
Yes.
system level bugs like power management issues that you were
Yes.
having,
Yes.
those things get left aside. And I think, that's just a matter of time as far as polish is concerned. So I'm not sure, but I really think just in summary, if we want to really if we
Yes.
want to really encourage the Linux desktop, I think we really need to be looking for those long-term support releases,
Yes.
ones that are supposed to be a stake in the ground saying, this is
Yes.
stable, this should work. And
Yeah.
I think that's all we can really do for the time being.
I would have to totally agree. And let me say this before we're going to take just a quick short break here. I may, you know, once I play this back, you know, and then I do some editing, whatever. I may come across like I'm trashing. Oh, there's another Windows person trashing Linux, and if it comes across that way, I will apologize to all the listeners out there. I don't mean to come out that way, but let me just say, I installed Unity about a month ago. And right now, I am choosing that, at least for one machine. I am choosing Unity above Zorin 5. I like Zorin 5. I did a test test review in a virtual box and it was stable. So I don't want it to come across like trashing, Ubuntu or Linux. I am not. I am, for those, those viewers or listeners who are listening to this for the first time, I am primarily a Windows user who is promoting Linux, at least as an option, to Windows users to at least try it. So if I come across like degrading Linux or the open source community, I am not. And if it sounds that way, I apologize. But then again, well, just to say again, I like Unity. So, and I know some Linux users out there don't like it. Maybe they have found more bugs in it. It's not as stable, it's not as fast, whatever. Um, yeah, there are bugs in it, but so far for me, it has been just about Unity just has been just about as stable as Zorin 4 was and is still, I guess. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
anyway,
well, I
yeah,
mean, same
yeah,
same disclaimer comes from this corner of the globe as well. Honestly, I really think Unity has some big potential.
yes,
And as far as I was concerned, there was nothing on the desktop level that bothered me about Ubuntu 11.04. Sure, it wasn't as customizable, but that's a different story. For me, it was
yes,
mainly kernel issues. It was
yes.
I had some weird boot up problems. I just
Yes.
had a few system level bugs that, that they'll get ironed
Okay.
out over
Okay.
releases. They always do. But,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for me, it was just enough to just roll back to the
Okay.
1010 derivatives.
Well, I get frequent questions, all the time. Well, what should I use? Should I use this or that? Use what works, and for me right now, Windows 7 works. And really, even Windows XP, Windows XP has not gone away. I had a comment was it last week? Well, if Windows 7 is so good, then why are half PC users in this country or whatever, still using Windows XP? And
Because it works.
I want to say, well, duh. No, I didn't say that, but I'm saying it now. Well, duh, because it works. Because, right, right. Now, this is, of course, applying all the service packs and running an antivirus and all that. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, to all the viewers out there, use what works. Okay.
There's actually an interesting article that I was reading that what is the actual end cost of running Linux,
Ah,
especially
yes,
in a
yes.
corporate sense. And I'm not sure if you remember, but do you remember a little while ago, it would have been last year sometime, Microsoft actually put out a video which was basically trashing all over OpenOffice, saying that although it's free software, it actually cost corporations bucket loads more because in, support and in,
Uh,
hours spent in,
I think I saw something
repairing
like
and
that on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, if that's true, that's uncalled for. I mean, that's just wrong.
yeah,
Yeah.
and honestly, it was, but it
Okay.
it sparked some interesting articles based on, all right, well, what is the actual cost of using Linux, even though it is free?
Yeah.
How much does it cost in reality? And because of the fact that, it comes, most people when they see a problem, they think, oh, I take it to someone who can fix it, and I pay them to
Yes.
fix it.
Yes.
From that point of view, Linux, especially if you've got a fairly buggy experience,
Yeah.
can end up costing you a fair bit, especially in a corporate sense,
Okay.
where all they do is call up IT and say, "I'm having this issue, come and
Yes.
fix it," sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but having said that, because the fact it is free, it just
Yeah.
becomes a choice. It's just
Yes.
like, do you want to use it? Does it work for you? Go ahead and use it. If it doesn't, don't worry about it.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree. Um, I think because you come primarily from a Linux type of background, me more Windows. I think the fact that we can talk about this on a level, more of like a level operating system playing field. I think this is valuable information for our listeners out there who may be thinking, well, Windows is better than Linux, not necessarily, or vice versa. Each has its pros and cons. Um, have you gotten any more comments, since you did that last video? I mean, like over the top comments or anything like that? I really didn't notice any. It seems like people pretty
Yeah,
much agreed. Yeah, yeah.
basically, it all came down to just the classic, people going, "Oh, Windows" sort of thing, like, "Oh, whoopee doo."
Yeah, yeah,
But excuse me. Uh, but the top comments here are, or at least for the uploader ones,
yeah,
we had
yeah,
one person who commented that, thank you for the video, etc.
yes,
But he was saying that it wasn't really a comparison. I mean, you didn't mention the pros and cons of each environment thoroughly enough,
yeah,
except maybe for the price, which you stated that they are both good.
right,
So yeah, I
okay,
mean, I think that's true.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
given time constraints, I can't really go into absolutely all the pros and cons,
right,
but
right,
he did make a valid point that although I said that both were good, I didn't really side with one or the other as far as a comparison is concerned. And
right, right,
but
right,
I think I'm pretty sure that I wanted to do that on purpose because of the fact that if you side with one and say Windows is garbage and this is the way to go, you're going to get all sorts of, you're going to get
well,
all sorts of flame in the comments.
yeah,
So
it's yes,
in my
yes,
opinion, I can't really trash Windows 7 and I can't really trash
yeah,
Linux because they both have some solid reasons to use them behind them. I mean,
right,
you know, Windows
yes,
has the market share that it has, but
right,
Linux has some awesome stuff going on as well. So, I mean, they're both fantastic. If one can suit your needs at lower cost than the other one
yes,
can, you
yes,
know, especially even though I mentioned one of the commenters actually said, "Oh well, as far as cost is concerned, I was talking about, hardware price. Well, if you've got an old laptop and you want to, you have to not only pay for Windows 7, but you
okay,
also have to pay for then, some sort of hardware upgrade like RAM or something like that.
right, right,
And
right,
although that's kind of true, at the same time, there has been a good amount of people that, yourself included, which have had positive experiences running Windows 7 on
yes,
on
yes,
less on subpar hardware.
yes,
And
yes,
and at the same time, the Linux base is getting heavier. But then I just responded to that comment saying, yep, well, that's why I mentioned that there is that light version available, which
right,
does give you limited usability as far as the actual user experience goes. But,
right, right,
it works on significantly less hardware than a Windows
yes,
7 desktop does.
yes,
And honestly, I've had a friend who she was running Windows XP on a 6-year-old laptop. It, obviously ran XP from when
yes,
she bought it back in 2005,
yes,
and by the time Service Pack 3 came along, initially she only had 256 meg of RAM,
yes.
which is, yeah, obviously, next to nothing.
It's
So
still kind of low. Yeah, it's still kind of
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
by the time Service Pack 3 came along, Windows XP practically walked itself into the ground. It just,
Yeah, I know.
it just ceased to work.
Grab the
Um,
crutches. Yeah, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so essentially, then Linux became a very real option just because there
Yes.
are environments out there like XFCE or LXDE, which are
Yes.
both very lightweight, very nimble, and very fast. Since then, she did get another 256 meg of RAM, so she had
Ah,
about 400 something when you
right.
take out the graphics memory.
Right. Right.
And as of right now, she's actually running Linux Mint Debian Edition, the XFCE version,
Okay.
which is super lightweight.
Okay. Okay.
And because it's Debian, it's pretty stable. Like we haven't noticed any major issues with it.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but then you can just stick your flag in the ground and say, no, I'm happy with it the way it is. You don't have to update it or anything. It
Right.
just
Right. Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
just keep humming for, probably years on end.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's we may talk about this in part two of this TosCast podcast here, but yeah, it's sometimes I'll get a comment, well, Windows sucks. Well, yeah, sometimes if you get a virus or, Linux sucks. Well, yes, if you get a bug. I mean, come on. That is such a huge, broad, unfair, generalized statement for both Windows or Linux. You know,
Absolutely.
like yes, like today I did an update and something happened. Man, this really sucks. But the whole operating system suck? Well, of course not. You know,
Mm. The
and
thing
just
is that
yeah. So
mm,
yeah.
both
So
both
yeah.
both sides of the coin, the Linux community and Microsoft, they put so much effort into what they do, and honestly, they deserve credit for it.
Yes.
So in my mind, saying one or the other sucks is not really fair on either party because they both do
Yes.
an incredibly hard job to make their
Yes.
products
Yes.
usable.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, computers are just tools. You
Yes.
use the best tool for the job. It's as simple as that.
Yes. I was watching oh, the other night you mentioned computer. What was I watching? I was watching a movie. Oh, it was Terminator 3 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Where the computers Skynet take over the world. You know what I
Yep,
mean? And
sure.
and it's like, well, yeah, and it was a very good movie, I thought, in my opinion. But I'm watching this and I'm like, you know what? Here we are, 2011. Could this happen? Could computers take over the world? I mean, have we lost some of our humanity with computers? And if we do, how far? How much, if it's even possible, how much will we lose to the point where computers, like the movie, like Skynet, or whatever, say, you know what? You've lost your humanity. We'll take over. Thank you very much. You mentioned
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
it's like now
yeah.
we're laughing about it, but I mean, is it, maybe this is a topic for another podcast, But I thought, is it possible? And I'm thinking.